Now those of you who watch my Excel 2010 training videos on macros will have an idea of what we're about to do here. But the definition, basically, of a macro is that it's a collection of actions used to automatically run a set task or a set of tasks. And for the example here, I want to go ahead and create a simple macro that will open up, let's say, the contact form. I know you could argue and say, well, I can just come over here and double click and open it up, but that's not the point. The point is to introduce you to a macro by doing something simplistic, and then in the next couple of training videos, I'll show you how you can go ahead and create something a little bit more, well, let's say challenging, or in other words, that will automatically run a set task, and you can see how powerful it can be instead of just a simple task by opening up this form. So let's go ahead and get started by coming up here, click on the Create tab, go to the Macros and Code group, click on the Macro button. The layout has changed in the macro window. As you recall in earlier versions like Access 2007 or earlier, you had the action column over to the left-hand side, the arguments in the middle, the properties down below. Well, it looked just like the design view of a table. For example, if I go ahead and I right-click, go to the design view, we have the action column, then the arguments column, then down below we'd have the properties for the actions. Well, let me go ahead and close out. It's changed. And when it comes to choosing the actions, all you have to do is click on the drop-down arrow here and it lists the actions, or you can choose them over here in the Action Catalog pane. You can just come over here and expand it by group and say, okay, I'm looking for a data import-export action. You've got the list here. Go ahead and hover over one, read more about it, and then when you want to add it, just double-click it or click and drag. Or again, you can come over here and click on the drop-down arrow. So for example, my first action is going to be called the echo. When I click on the drop-down arrow, you can type in the word E, C, and if it doesn't pull up an action, let me hit the escape key to get back out of here. It's because Access isn't listing all the actions. Let me explain it. Come up here, click on the Design tab, and in the Show Hide group, it's got the Action Catalog. It lists by default 70 trusted macros that will run, even if the content has not been trusted. In other words, you can set up your Trust Center settings to say, okay, disable all macros. It'll still run the actions from the Action Catalog, but the Action Catalog, again, only shows 70 trusted macros. If I want the remainder 20 action codes, then I can go ahead and click on Show All Actions. And you can see up here, and you can see the difference between the two icons. The action code's got a little lightning bolt, and then there's an action code, and then there's one with a yellow yield sign that means that, hey, it's not trusted, so it won't run if you have your macros disabled. Well, how do you enable and disable your macros? Come up here, click on the File tab, go to the Options, and then over here, click on the Trust Center. Then come over to the right, click on its corresponding Trust Center Settings button, and then on the macro settings, select that and say that you want to, well, in my case, I want to enable all macros. It's not recommended because it could be dangerous code. Well, I'm the one that's creating this, so I trust me. I'm not going to write in code that's going to screw me up. In any case, that's the difference between the two. When we put on Disable all macros, it'll still run the 70 trusted macros that are listed, the actions, but not the 20 that are not trusted. In any case, when I enable them all, then that's not a problem. Click OK, click OK. Show all actions, click on the drop-down arrow, type in E, there it is, starts pulling it up, echo, hit the tab key. When I do that, you can see the yellow yield sign that says, okay, this is an unsafe action. Why is it unsafe? Well, it's not a typical action that Microsoft trusts. But hey, since I'm the one that's creating it, and I know what I'm using it for, then it should be okay. Now, first of all, what's an echo? Well, if you hover over any part of it, it says, that little pop-up, hides or shows the results of a macro while it runs. So in other words, I've got a lot of actions, let's say, that I want to do. I mean, not really, but let's pretend that I do. As it goes through all those actions to perform it bouncing around, do you want to see that? Or do you just want to see the end result of your actions, like, well, in this case, opening up a form? That's what I want to see. I don't want to see how it's made. I just want to see the end result. So I'll say, do I want the echo on? No. Click on the drop-down arrow and say, I don't want to see how the cookies are made. I just want the cookie, the end result of these actions that I'm going to add. Now, granted, I don't have many actions, but nonetheless, I want to introduce you to the echo in case if you had a lot of actions to perform. Now, if you made a mistake, and you added an action that you didn't intend to, come over here and click on that X and it removes it. Another way to add an action, like I said, you can use the Action Catalog, and you can come over here and try to find it by group, like let me collapse this group and expand that one. There's echo right there. Again, the yellow yield sign. I can click and drag it over here, remove it, double click on it, it adds it, remove it. If I'm not certain of the group that it's in, come up here, type in echo, and as I start typing, it automatically starts filtering for the first couple of letters there. Then I can go ahead and double click on it, and then go ahead and remove the filter. And let me collapse that. And then if I don't want to see the action catalog pane, then I can go ahead and close out of it. If I want to bring it back up, come back up here on the Design tab to the Show Hide group and click on Action Catalog. Okay. In any case, I'm going to close out of it. So we've got the echo. Let's go ahead and set it to no. I don't want to see all the actions being performed, just the result of those actions. Let's add a new action. Click on the drop-down arrow. I think I want it to open. Type in, there it is, open form. Just hit the tab key, it adds it. It says, okay, what's the name of the form? Click on the drop-down arrow. It's my contact form. And then when it opens it, do you want it in form view or choose another view? Design view, print preview, data sheet. Form is just fine. Now there's some other fields here. Instead of just opening a form simplistically, we'll go over one of them, the where condition, later on, but for right now we're keeping it simple. Opening up the contact form. Let's go ahead and add another action. Click on the drop down arrow and let's add the comment. Select that. Comments, as you recall in the previous versions of Access, when it came to the macros, you can type in a comment saying, this one's supposed to do this. You know, so somebody else who comes in here doesn't go, let's see, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? I don't know about the echo. Let me go ahead and read more about it by hovering over it and see if I can guess the purpose of it. Well, go ahead and leave some comments. That way you can remind yourself or the next database user why you're doing what you're doing here. So the first comment has got nothing to do with performing action. It's just a simple comment that says, let's see, to hide results of the macro until the macro is finished. When I'm done, let me click off in a blank area. Turns it green, shows that it's a comment here. That indicates that that's a comment. It's not an action. Let me add another comment. Click on the drop down arrow, type in C, and there you can see comment. Hit the tab key, and let's type in opens the contact form. Click off in a blank area. So what I can do is I can take these comments and I can move them. So I could say, let's see, to hide the results of the macro till the macro is finished. That's the echo. So how about if I move this up above the echo, or maybe I can move below it. I mean, you want to choose the way that makes sense to you, but if I put the comment above, then that will explain the action below it. So if I come down here, I can select it, come over here to the right hand side, and then I can click in that shaded blue area, click and drag that up and put it at the top of the echo, and then click off, and that's how it looks. Or you can come up here, click in there, and use the down arrow or up arrow to move it around. Okay. And of course this guy, let's go ahead and move him up. So I have the comment for the purpose of the action that I'm using below. Oh, and then if I'm not working on these actions here where I can view all the fields, I'm done. I can collapse it. For example, you got the little minus sign to collapse the open form. Or if I want to expand it, so I can go ahead and change the form name and the form view. That's fine, but I'm done, so I don't need to see it all expanded. Or if I wanted to expand all of them, come up here, the Design tab to the Collapse Expand group, click on Expand All, it expands all of them, shows us the name of the action and then the details of the action, or collapse all, or just expand the actions and then collapse the actions. I mean, I don't have much in the way of a comment, so when I click on Collapse All or Expand All, well, you can see right here that now that I click on Expand All, it wants to wrap it around, but when I click on Collapse, it extends the comments. So for right now, that's the difference between the Expand and Collapse actions and all. Let's go ahead and save our work. Click on the Save button, 3-letter prefix, MCR for macro, and then my. It opens up the contact form. Click OK. Adds it over here in the navigation pane. If you don't see it here, click on the drop-down arrow and choose All Access Objects, and well, there we go. Let me go ahead and close out, so when I double click on it, it opens up the contact form. Yay! And then if I need to make any changes to the macro, let me go ahead and close out of here and say, okay, open up a different form. Just go ahead and right click on it, because if you double click, it's going to run it. Or you can right click and run it there, but just go to the design view, go ahead and expand all, make your changes to these actions, come in here, click on it, change the form, drop down arrow to another form. Anyways, you get the idea. Close out, and I can go ahead and save the changes here, which I didn't make any, but if you right click and go back to the design view, the layout is what stays the same. If I save it expanded like this when I closed out. As you recall in the previous training video, we learned how to create a macro, and there's mine right there, that when I double click on it, performs some actions that in short opens up this contact form. Let me open up this other form. Here, I want to show you how you can create a button and assign a macro to it that when somebody clicks on it, in this case it's going to be this macro assigned to that button, it'll open up the related form, the contact form. How is this form related to the contact form? Let me show you. I've got my customer information, the customer number 10, and then the name of the company, but I don't have the name of the contact person there. To get it, I have to open up the contact form, double click, and there it is. For customer number 10, it's Bob Johnson. So instead, let me close out. I can go ahead and create a button here with that macro assigned to it, so we can click on it to open up that form instead of having the front end user come over here. And you can imagine if I had dozens or hundreds of forms, they'd have to sort through all of it to find it and scroll down, and that's just a mess. Just have them focus on the forms here to be able to jump from one form to the next by adding that button there and with that macro assigned to it. So to get started, let's go ahead and right click, go to the design view. To add the button, come up here on the design tab to the controls group, and there it is. Click on it, bring it down, click in a blank area. The wizard opens up, and when it comes to assigning a macro to a button, we don't want the wizard, so click cancel. When you do that, it still leaves the button there. So to assign the macro to this button, you want to bring up the property sheet. You can right click on it and go down to properties. And over to the right on the Alt tab, let's give it a name. The default name for this command button is Command 27. I mean, it sounds cool, but let's go ahead and give it a name that we can recognize, CMD for command, and then contact, which means to me it opens up the contact form. Again, it's my database, my design. I can name it how I want. That makes sense to me. In any case, the caption, at least for the front end user, we need to have it make sense for them. So let's go ahead and type in the contact here, hit enter. Or you can type in opens up the contact form. I mean, that's a bit lengthy, but I think they'll understand with just the word contact. And then once I hit enter, it updates the button from command 27 to contact. Next, to go ahead and assign the macro to the button, really simple. Click on the event tab, and where it says on click on the drop down arrow. So when somebody clicks on it, it'll execute the my contact macro. Pretty cool, huh? Let me save my work, take it for a test drive, right click, go to the form view. So I'm sitting here, and I want to go and find out who the contact person is for mountain camping. Click on contact, opens up the form. Great. It's Bob Johnson. When I'm done, close out, and then go to the next record. And it's mountain camping, but even though it's the same company name, it's in a different state, different location. So if I go over here and click on contact, you see the problem I'm running into? I mean, the command button is great with the macro assigned to it. It opens up the related form. But now I'm thinking I would like it to open up, not only to open up the form, but go right to that related record. Because if I go back into the customer data form, I'm on customer number 15. When it opens up this form, it takes me to the very first record. And when I click and go to the next record, you see I had to advance to that record to find the contact person for that customer number. What I want to do in the next training video is I want to go ahead and talk about the where condition, show you how it can compare records in the current form and finds its match in the second form. I mean, that's getting cooler, isn't it? Let's go ahead and do that. Continuing on from the previous training video, the problem I was running into is that when I wanted to open up the related form to this form, find the contact person for, let's go over to record number 2, the customer number 15, I wanted it to open up and find its matching record. It doesn't do that right now, so when I click on the contact, it opens up the related form, but I have to navigate over to the customer number 15. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and modify the macro that's been assigned to this contact button to include a where condition, where it compares the record in the current form and finds its matching record in the second form. What is it going to be comparing? Well, I want to compare this field, the customer number field, to the customer number field in the related contact form. So to do that, I need to modify the macro that's been assigned to this button to include that where condition. And I can do it one of two ways. I can easily come over here and right-click on the macro, go to the design view, or if I have a bunch of macros here that I have to scroll through to find it, and I don't remember the name of the macro that's been assigned to this button, you can right-click in a blank area here, go to the design view, and then select the button, and then bring up the property sheet, right-click on it, go down to properties, and well, it's already there. And as you recall, we assigned the macro to the button by going to the event tab, and then clicking on the on-click drop-down arrow. Well, it's right there. All you have to do is go ahead and click its corresponding build button, and there we go. Takes us to the design view. So either way, once we're in the design view, you want to go to the open form action by clicking on it, and you can see the name of the form it's opening up and also the view, which is form view. There's the where condition. Let me move off and hover back over that field, it brings up a synopsis of what that field's used for. And if you look at the example down below, it gives you a pretty good idea of what it wants or what to type in this field here. It wants to compare the ID in one form to the ID in the other. Let me go ahead and type it in, and then I'll explain it and see if it makes sense. Now, if I had more to type in, because let's say the name of these fields are a bit long or lengthy, I can go ahead and zoom in on this cell here. And I can't do it by right-clicking because it doesn't give me that choice, but if you remember the shortcut keys, it's Shift F2. It zooms in, gives us more room to work with here. So what you're looking at here is the customer number, the name of the field, in the new form that we're opening up, which is the contact form, and then it says OK equals the name of the customer number in the form that we just came from, or that we're coming from, which is the customer info form. I mean, this part makes sense, right? Customer number in one form with the customer number in the other form, compare those two forms. But like I said, this one's assigned to the new form, and then this one points back to the old form so it can compare against that record that we just left to the customer number in the new form, which is on the left-hand side of the equals sign. So to get back to that customer number field in the customer number form, which of all the access objects is a form, that's how you write it. So you'll go ahead and you'll put in square brackets the name of the object, which is forms. You can see right there, forms. Then the operator or exclamation point that goes down in the hierarchical structure to within the objects. What form are we looking at? It's the form that we're coming from, which is right here, the name of it, form customer info. Then the exclamation point again that says, okay, once you're in that form, what field are we looking at? It's the customer number field. So use this as a template to go ahead and type and to use the where condition to compare the number field in the old form that we're leaving to the customer number field in the new form that we're opening up when we click on that button. Go ahead and click Okie dokie, and then let's go ahead and be sure to save our work. Close out of the macro. Now let's take it for a test drive. Let me go ahead and right click, go to the form view, and let's go to record number 3, which is customer number 20. Click on the contact button, and yay! It took us right to customer number 20. So it matched the records. It could find the matching record over here in the related form. And if you notice down below, it's applying a filter here. So it's doing, in essence, a filter by selection. What we selected over here in the customer data form was customer number 20, so it filtered by that in the new form. So if I go ahead and click on it to unapply the filter, well, then it brings up all the records here, but I can go ahead and click on it again to reapply it. So let's close out, and if I try it again, to customer number 25, click contact, yay! I told you it was a process with the macros. It seemed so simplistic at first, but yet you can see how powerful they can become once you get the basics of it and build on it from there. The required data entry macro is a macro that will check the data entered into a cell and execute the macro. For example, if a field is left blank, it won't allow the record to be saved until we take action and actually fill something in this field. So I'm going to go ahead and apply or assign the required data entry macro to the customer name field, so that way nobody forgets to leave it blank, but when they do, and they try to save it, not only will it prevent them, but it'll actually take the cursor into that cell, so they don't have to take that extra step, and they can just go ahead and type in the name. So to get started, let me go ahead and right-click in a blank area, go to the design view, and then we need to bring up the property sheet for the entire form. So to do that, come over here in a blank area, and right-click, go to Properties. It brings up the property sheet. The selection type is the entire form. And then click on the Event tab, and then click in the Before Update cell here. The Before Update box here is used to specify events that will occur before the form is updated or the record is saved. So after you type in everything over in your form and somebody tries to save it, then it's going to check something. What is it going to check? Well, it's going to check the macro. Let's go ahead and click on the corresponding Build button for the Before Update box or cell here. And then we want to create this macro that it will check before it updates. So the operative word being macros. So let's open up the macro builder, click OK. And it's the same screen that we're used to in the past couple of training videos to create a macro and then also edit the macro. So let me first go ahead and type in the comment what this macro is going to do. Come up here, click on the drop down arrow, select comment to require data in the customer name field. Okay, let's go ahead down below, set up our condition, which by the way, let me click on the drop down arrow. It's going to be an if-then statement. In other words, if this happens, then do this. The if replaces conditions in the previous versions of Access. So as you recall in Access 2007 or earlier versions, you had the condition column. Well, this replaces it again. So let me go ahead and click in here and then type in my condition. Customer name is null. So if that field in square brackets is empty, what action do we want it to do next? We want to go ahead and click on the drop-down arrow, type in CAN, there it is, cancel event. After I type in the first 3 letters, if the rest are highlighted in blue, I can just hit the tab key and it automatically adds it. So what's the event? It cancels the record from being saved or updated. And we can go ahead and add a comment just below here to say that. So click on the drop-down arrow, select comment. Let's go ahead and type it in. If customer name is left blank, do not save the record. That's the cancel event. So I'm leaving little trails of breadcrumbs for those who come in here going, what's this? If, to require data entry in the customer name field. What's the cancel event? Well, if they don't type something in there, then it won't save the record. So it makes it pretty simplistic for the next person who's going to be working in this database to figure out what's going on. And then after it cancels that, let me go ahead and click Add New Action. How about if we have it go to, type in go to, there it is, go to control, hit the tab key to select it. So that way, if they're in another field, let's take them back to the customer name field. So all they have to do is go ahead and type in the name there and not have to, use their mouse to get back to it. And it's going to be open square brackets, customer, close square bracket. And then, of course, we can add a comment here. Click on the drop-down arrow, select comment. Let me type it in really fast. There you go. Go to the customer name field. And then when we're finished, let me go ahead and save the macro here. Close out, takes me back to my form. And you can see over in the property sheet, before update, it's going to check this field here before it allows me to save the record to make sure that that customer name field is not blank. And then we'll see what happens. Let's go ahead and right-click, go to the form view, and let's click on a new blank record. And we type in a customer number. And I'm going to leave that blank and go ahead and type in the address, 123. In any case, let's go ahead and save it right now. So Shift-Enter, and notice how it took me automatically right back to the customer name field, and it didn't save the record. If I try to click back and click back again, it doesn't allow me to do that because it says, hey, look, you need to enter in the customer name. Well, it doesn't say that. So that's the next issue I need to work with. In other words, I ought to have a message macro that displays a message to let people know what's going on, because somebody could say, hey, this is broken. Every time I tried to go ahead and save it, it doesn't do it. I mean, it doesn't flag you, but you'd think that after each time it keeps coming back the cursor to the customer name field, that they might get it. I don't know. In any case, hit the escape key to get out of that so we don't have to type in that record. And in the next training video, I'll show you how you can go ahead and add a message macro. Now, continuing on from the previous training video when we learned how to set a required data entry macro to the customer name field. I mean, it depends if you want to continue on or if it doesn't matter whether you have a message macro, but the problem is that when somebody forgot to type in the customer name and they tried to save the record, the required data entry macro took them back to that field here, but it didn't display a message saying, hey, you got to enter in the customer name here. It just took the cursor back to the field, and so nobody may get the hint that they need to enter in the customer name. So in addition to the macro to require data to be entered into this field, we're going to tag on a pop-up message box to that macro where it'll go ahead and display that message if the user forgot to enter in a customer name. So let's go ahead and right-click in a blank area, go to the design view, and then make sure that you bring up the property sheet for the entire form. As you recall in the previous training video, you can right-click in the blue area here, go to Properties. If it's already up, make sure it says the selection type is Form. If not, click on the drop-down arrow, go to Form, and then click on the Event tab, because that's where we started in the last training video to create this embedded macro that before somebody can go ahead and save the record, that this macro checks for this field, customer name field, to make sure that there's data entered into that field. So let's go ahead and add on to that. Click in that cell, click on its Build button, opens up the macro that we already worked on in the previous training video. Let's go ahead and click on the If to select it. There we go. And then where it says you can add a new action within that if statement, if this happens, then do this, this, this. Well, also we want to go ahead and add. Click on the new action drop-down arrow, and let's go ahead and type in MESS message box. Once you see it there, just hit the tab key to select it, and it says, okay, what kind of message do you want to display when this happens? If customer name is blank, then cancel the event, then go to the control, then display this message. And there's my message. You must enter a value in the customer name field. Do you want to give it a beep? Yes, or no beep if beeps annoy people. In any case, I'll leave it to yes. Then the type, when you hover over it, it tells you the type of information you can display, if it's none, or if it's critical, or if it's warning, or just informational. Click on the drop-down arrow, we can say it's for your information. That we won't save the record unless you go ahead and type something in the customer name field. And then the title for this message box could be Validate Data Message. And then don't forget, if you want to go ahead and create a comment explaining what's going on up above, go ahead and click on the Add New Action. Type in COMM, there it is. Comment, hit the tab key, and then go ahead and type it in. There we go. Display a message box to inform the user why the record is not saved. So all this is happening within the if statement. So if this meets this condition, customer name is empty, then cancel the event, go to the control or the customer name field, and display the message, okay? And be sure to save our work here. Let's close out of it. And let's go ahead and take it for a test drive. Let me right-click, go to the form view, and then come down at the bottom, click on New Blank Record. Let's type in the customer number, and then let's skip the customer name, and we start typing in the address, and we're like, okay, we're done. Let's go ahead and save it. Shift-Enter. There we go. You must enter a value in the customer name field. Yay, the message box works, and there's the title of the box, Validate Data, and I for Information. Click OK. Took me right to the customer name field, and you can see the record hasn't been saved, so I have to type in something, and then when I do, it'll allow me to save the record. I'm going to go ahead and hit Escape to get out of that. The Automate macro is a macro that you can assign to a field that will check that field for a value and automatically update the value in another field based upon that value in the first field. For example, I'm looking at the city and state here. If I assign the Automate macro to this city field, it'll check it and it'll say, okay, if I see these cities, let's say Sandy and Salt Lake, I'll automatically go to this field and update it with the correct state, Utah, because both of those cities are in the state of Utah, thereby cutting down on the front-end user's data entry and speeding them up. So to go ahead and assign this, let's go ahead and right-click and go to the Design View, select the City Text Box field, and then double-click on the border really fast to bring up its corresponding property sheet, or again, you can right-click and go down to Properties, that works. And then go to the Event tab, come down here and click in on Exit, because after somebody exits this field, the macro is going to be executed, and it's going to check the city field and say, okay, do I see Salt Lake or Sandy? If I do, we'll build the macro that will go ahead and enter the state, Utah, in the state field. So to do this, let's go ahead on Exit, build that macro by clicking on its Build button. There it is, Macro Builder. Click OK, and brings up the macro window. Okay, let's go ahead and add a comment so we can let people know what we're doing here, and then enter in the action. Let's click on the drop-down arrow, select Comment, and then we'll type in. There we go. To enter a value in the state field based upon the value in the city field. So this is going to be a condition again, so we want to use the if. If this condition is true, then go ahead and do these things. So click on the drop-down arrow and select if, and then if, let's go ahead and type in square brackets, the city, close square brackets, in, space, let's go ahead and do open parentheses, open quotes, and it's going to be Salt Lake, close quotes, and then to add another, comma, open quotes, Sandy, close quotes, and then we can keep adding more cities if we wanted to, but those two are sufficient here. Let's close the parentheses here, and so this will compare the value in the city field with the values in parentheses. So if it sees in the city field Salt Lake and Sandy, then what? Because that's the condition. Then we want to go ahead and add a new action. Click on the drop-down arrow and choose, let's type in SETV. Oh, it's not bringing it up. The reason why, let me hit the escape key, is because we're not showing all actions. Click on that to show all actions. Let's type in again, SETV. There we go, set value. Hit the tab key and it says, okay, what do you want to set the value to when the city has one of these two names in it? And we're going to go ahead and type in open square brackets, state, close square brackets. In other words, this is the name of the field we want to display the value in, and the expression is going to be the value that we want displayed in that state field, and it's going to be open quotes, UT, close quotes. So let's go ahead and add a comment down below explaining what's going on up here. Click on the drop-down arrow, choose comment. Let's type in, there we go, if city is Salt Lake or Sandy, then set the state to UT or Utah. In which case, when it does, do we need to have the cursor when we hit the tab key automatically go to the state field when something's already been updated automatically for us? No. So how about if we go ahead and we add a new action that, if this statement is true, to have the control, the cursor, go right to the zip code or postal code. So let's go ahead and add a go to control. So I'll click on the drop down arrow, type in go, there it is, go to control, hit the tab key to add it. The name of the field that we want to go to, let's do open square brackets, and the name of the field is postal, close square brackets. Now again, the field names aren't case sensitive, so it doesn't matter if I type in lower or uppercase, just make sure that you have it spelled correctly, and if there's a space between postal and code, that, well, you got the space. Okay, let's add a comment to explain our action above. Click on the drop down arrow, there's comment. Let's go ahead and type this in. I mean, simple enough, right? Go to the postal code field. Okay, let's take it for a test drive. When we're finished, let's be sure to save our macro here. Click on the Save button. Let's close out of it. And let me close out of the property sheet. Let's right-click, go to the Form view, click on New Record, or actually we can go back to another record here and just say, okay, if the city has changed to Sandy, hit the Tab key. Oh, see, there we go. Changed it right to Utah for us and dumped us right in the zip code field. I'll hit Escape to get out of that so we don't make any changes. The conditional formatting feature allows you to apply a format to a text box based upon a condition. In this example, I want to be able to apply the format red and maybe also bold to any price that's $25 or less, to remind the front-end user that there's going to be an additional shipping charge or extra shipping charge for those purchases that, again, are $25 or less. So to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and right-click, go to the design view of the form, and then you can see it's a form within a form. This is the subform. Let me come in here, click on it once to select the subform, click on the price each field, because that's the field I want to apply my conditional formatting to. And then come up here, click on the Format tab, go to the Control Formatting group, click on Conditional Formatting, click on the New Rule, and then it says Format only cells where the field value is between, let's say it's got to be less than or equal to $25. And then what formatting do we want? We can make it, click on the drop down arrow, red, also bold, underline, italics, in any case you get the idea. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Click OK again. And let's go ahead and take it for a test drive. Right-click the tab, go to the Form view. There we go. That's under 25. So it'll signal the front-end user, somebody calls in to make an order, and they go, hey, I want to order a fanny pack. Is there free shipping? You could say no. Because it's $25 or less, shipping charges will apply. Now, if that doesn't grab their attention, because maybe they're not always looking at the price, I mean, it's hard to miss, but in any case, if you've got other fields here that you would also like to apply the conditional formatting to, that's based upon this condition where it has to be less than or equal to $25, because you can't, well, theoretically apply it to this one because that's a text field. But let me show you the backdoor approach. Let's go ahead and right-click, go to the design view, go ahead and click to select the subform, and then click to select the product text box. Let's go ahead and come up here to the Format tab, to the Control Formatting group, click on Conditional Formatting, and then click on the New Rule button. And then we're going to click on the drop-down arrow and create an expression. And the expression is going to be pointing to the price each field. So even though we selected the product field, we're saying don't look at the product field, look at the price each field. And if you see over there that field for this record is less than or equal to $25, then go ahead and apply that formatting to the product field. Okay, so here's the expression. We're looking in the objects, and what object are we looking at? It's the forms. There we go, the forms. And it says within the forms, what form are you looking at? It's the form categories, which we're currently in, form categories. So we're just pointing it back to itself. And then in the form categories, what are we looking at in that form? Well, we're looking at the subform, the form within the form. And there it is, F sub products. That's the form that's inside this form. So we're looking at this form inside the subform that's within this form. And then once we're inside that subform, what field are we looking at to compare to set the condition up? It's going to be the price each field. And it has to be less than or equal to 25. Now remember, the equals always has to be on the right-hand side. It can't be equal to or less than, otherwise you're going to get an error. So what's going to be the formatting? If the price each field for the products field equals that, it's going to be, well, I like red. We can make it italics and bold. That's fun. Click okie dokie. Click OK. Let's take it for a test drive. Go ahead and right-click, go to the form view, and hey, there we go. So like I said, we had the product field. Instead of saying, okay, let's create a condition for that field because it's a text field, we said, just look at this field. And if it's less than or equal to 25, then go ahead and apply the formatting. So we went around it by looking at another field to apply the same formatting that's been applied to this field, writing an expression to apply it to this field as well. Let's go ahead and click Next, or let's go ahead and look at Fort Tent or some other category here. And so far, well, there we go. The only one that has it $25 and less looks like Tiki Torch here in the Tiki Torch category and the Fanny Pack in the accessories category. Now, for those of you who've used the calendar control in previous versions of Access, the bad news is that it didn't ship with Access 2010. The calendar control is a control you can insert into a form that creates, well, I was going to show you a pop-up calendar. You can go ahead and toggle into the future, into the past by month. Well, instead, Microsoft recommends that you use the date picker option, which by default is always turned on anytime you create a date field. For example, if I come over here and open up my orders table, come over to this date field that has the date data type applied to it. When I click in it, you can see that it's got the date picker. The little icon that when you click on it allows you to pick a date. In any case, that's by default always turned on, and to turn it off, if you would like, just go ahead and right click, go to the design view of the table, select the date field, and there it is, the data type date/time, because down below in the corresponding field properties you can see that it says show date picker for dates. Click in it, click on the drop down arrow and say never, and it won't show it. So you can go ahead and use that to click on it to advance to find out future dates or past dates and so on. Now, as you know that you can base forms upon tables here, it will also give you the option to turn off the date picker at the form level without coming in here to the table and turning it off there. So if I close out of here and go to the subform orders, double click and open that up, I click in the field, there's the date picker. Let me right click, go to the design view, select the date field, and then double click on the border really fast to bring up its corresponding properties. And then over here on the Alt tab, you can see date picker, click on the drop down arrow and say never. So you can leave it turned on in the table, but turn it off at the form level in any case. Now, as far as those of you who need a calendar control, like I said, Microsoft isn't producing it for 2010, but there are a lot of third parties out there that will provide the coding to give you another option to create that calendar control, but you want to be careful. Make sure that you choose the right company that's not going to give you weird code that will harm your database or your computer. What you're looking at here is my category sales report, and I've got my products grouped by their categories here. So the products for the accessories, then for the Fort Tent, Screen Tent, and so on, and then the total for each category. What I would like to do is I'd like to insert a chart at the end of the report that has the totals for each category, maybe like a pie chart. Now, to insert a chart, I need a table or query of data that I can base this chart upon. And I do. I've got one over here. It's my categories total query. Double click on that. And I've got the total for each category, so I can go ahead and insert the pie chart based upon this query here. And you can see right off the bat that the Fort Tent is going to have the largest slice. But in any case, I want to go ahead and put that at the end of my report. So when I print it off, I can hand it out to the coworkers at the meeting, and they can go ahead and graphically see how well Fort Tent is doing in comparison with the others. Let me go ahead and close out. Right click in a blank area, go to the design view, and then which section am I going to be inserting this pie chart into to get it at the end of the report? Well, it's going to be right here, report footer, as opposed to at the end of the page footer, at the end of the category, or at the end of the product. So to go ahead and insert this, I'm going to go ahead and have to expand this grid open in the report footer section by hovering over the bottom of the grid until I can see my pointer turning into black arrows pointing up and down. Then I can go ahead and click and drag that to stretch it open, give me more room. Then to insert the chart, come up here on the Design tab to the Controls group, click on the More button, and choose the Chart Control, click on it, and then bring it down. Go ahead and click on it to add the chart, and then it brings up the wizard. It'll ask us a bunch of questions. We give it answers. Based upon our answers, it'll create that chart. The first question is which table or query would you like to use to create your chart with, or that you want to base this chart upon that data? Is it going to be data within the table? It's going to be within the query. And there it is, the Q for query, and then tote for total categories. So the category's total query. Go ahead and click Next. And then it says which fields contain the data that you want to see in the chart. Well, it's both the category names and their corresponding sales. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the button here, which brings over all of them, and then click Next. Okay, which chart do we want? Do we want a 3D pie or a 2D? Let's select 2D. And then click Next. and it says, okay, do you want to go ahead and preview your chart based upon where the data is being laid out? Category up here, sum of total sales down here. Let's go ahead and click preview. That looks good. There we go, Fort Tent. It's got the biggest slice. Close. Now, this is a pretty simplistic chart. If you had a column chart or a bar chart, something a little bit more detailed, you can change these up. You can go ahead and say, okay, the category I don't want up there, I want down here. So go ahead and click and drag it, dump it there, and then flip it around, total sales up here. And then before you go ahead and click finish, you want to preview it because, that doesn't look good, having the numbers here for our value series. So let's go ahead and close out and then flip that around. Category goes back up here and total sales goes back down there. And then click preview, and there we go. I like the legend the way it is here, as opposed to the other way. Let's click close, click next, and then it says if you want the chart to change from record to record, in other words, this is at the end of the report. This is the summary of it. I don't have a chart for each category or each product that will be changing, so I can leave as is or just say no field, leave it alone, click next. And then what title do we want to give to our chart? Well, it's going to be the Q1. And then do you want the chart to display a legend? Of course. Go ahead and click finish. And then as you scroll down, it gives us a generic view of the chart to let us know that, well, this is a chart. We won't actually see the details of it until we go to print preview. So let's go ahead and right click, go to print preview. Remember, it's at the end of the report, so I have to come down here in the record navigation bar, click on the last page, and there it is at the very end. Of course, if it's a bit small, you can always go ahead and right click, go back to the design view and scroll down here and hover over one of these corner handles to resize it. Let me click and drag at the bottom of the grid to stretch it open more, and let's see if we can make it kind of mammoth here. And then right click, report view. Whoops, let's go to print preview, go to the end. That's a bit bigger, looks good. What you're looking at is my phone list query where I have my employee's first name, last name, and their phone extension. And instead of just printing it off as is, I want to create a report based upon this query because I can organize my report. And I'm thinking of it in two ways. One is that if I just print it off as is, you can imagine if I had hundreds or thousands of employees, it would print all this off on the left-hand side of each page, wasting all the space in the middle and to the right-hand side. Well, in reports, I can go ahead and set up columns. So that way I can have two columns where when it gets to the bottom of page 1, it can continue up at the top of page 1 in the second column and not wasting all that space. Second of all is I can go ahead and group these employees by the first letter of their last name and have the label for each group, like a label A, maybe in bold, red, a color, and then have all the employees whose first letter in their last name begins with A, grouped under that label, and then the B's and the C's and so on. So to get started, let me go ahead and close out of here and create that report by coming up here, clicking on the Create tab, going to the Reports group, click on Report Design, opens up the report in Design View, and then to base this report upon the phone list, to have that as its record source, come up here on the Design tab to the Tools group, click on Property Sheet, make sure the selection is for the report. If not, click on the drop-down arrow, select Report. Then on the Alt tab, in the Record Source field, click in there, click on the drop-down arrow, and the source of our data is going to be pulled from the phone list query, and there we go. Let me go ahead and close out of here. Next, I want to go ahead and add a label, let's say. So at the top of each page, we can have, what this report's about. It's going to be our Dreamforce phone list. So to add a label up there, let me first come down here at the top of the detail bar and click and drag that down so I've got more space. Come up here, click on the label, come down here, click there, and so it adds the label, then just start typing. Then when I'm done, there it is, Dreamforce phone list, hit enter, and then you can apply, of course, whatever formatting you want. Bold, make it a, color red or a larger size. I'm going to go ahead and click and drag the border to move it right there. Looks good. Next, to go ahead and add the fields to the details section, I want to come up here on the Design tab to the Tools group, click on Add Existing Fields to bring up the field list here. We only have 3 fields. Now, instead of adding the last name and the first name, I'm thinking of combining them into one field. It's called Concatenate. And to do that, I need to add an unbound text box and go ahead and bind that text box to an expression that I'm going to go ahead and write that will combine both those fields, last name and first name. So to do that, come up here, Design tab, Controls group, click on the text box, come down here in the Details section, click to add it. I'm going to go ahead and select the label, delete it, I don't need it. select the unbound text box and bring up the properties for it. Right click on it, go down to properties, and then come over here in the properties sheet on the Alt tab in the control source field. And if I start writing the expression, such a small cell here, it's going to be cut off. So let me go ahead and zoom in by right clicking and going to zoom. There we go, we've got more space here. Let me go ahead and copy and paste this in. Now the reason why I copied and pasted this in, I'll go over it in just a second, but first what you're looking at here is the equals symbol. You want to type the equals symbol or sign in, because if you don't, this expression won't work. So you've got in square brackets the last, which is for the last name field, and then it has the ampersand, which means combine. Combine with what? What's to the right of that ampersand? We have open quotes, a comma, and a space. And then we have the ampersand that combines that to the first field or the first name. Why would I put a comma and a space in open quotes? Because I don't want it slammed all together, last name and first. I would like a comma and a space between the last name and the first name. Otherwise, I could just go ahead and delete all that and just have one ampersand between the last field and the first field, and it would just slam them all together. Now the reason why I copied and pasted this in is because when I copied it from Word, for some reason, it copies the formatting of the quotes, and Access doesn't like formatting applied to the quotes. So if I click OK, it goes, this doesn't work for us. We'll click OK. So we want to go ahead and right click, go back to zooming in. And then what you want to do is you just want to go ahead and type over those quotes or retype the quotes so it gets rid of the formatting and applies the correct formatting. So you see the quotes aren't slanted, they're straight up and down. Click OK and Access doesn't have a problem with it. So after we concatenated or combined the last name with the first, let's hover over the border of that text box and drag it up here in the upper left-hand corner of the details section. Next, let's come up here on the Design tab to the Tools group, click on Add Existing Fields, and let's not forget the extension for each employee, so we'll click and drag that onto the grid in the Details section. Delete the label, and let's go ahead and select the border of the extension, click and drag that and put it just to the right of the combined last and first name. Next, we want to go ahead and we want to add an additional header section. In other words, we want to group it by the first letter of the last name, because right now it's just going to show all the records and not have them grouped. And as you recall in earlier training videos, when we wanted to go ahead and group, let me close out of the field list here, come up here on the Design tab to the Grouping and Totals group and click on Group and Sort. Opens up the task pane down below, or the window. Click on Add Group, and you want to go ahead and group it by any one of these three fields? No. We need to create an expression that says go ahead and group it by the first letter of the last name, not just the last name. So click on it. Opens up the window here, and let's go ahead and type in the expression, which is equals, type in, it's the left function. If you don't know what the left function is, you can watch my Excel 2010 training video on the left function. But basically what it is it's looking at the left part of a field. What field? Well, we'll pull it up in just a second. So I'll type in LFT, and then I'll do open parentheses, and then you can see the syntax for the left function says, okay, I need two things here. First of all, the string. And the string is found in the last name field, the characters in the last name field. And as you recall, open square brackets, LAST, is the name of my last name field, last, and then close square brackets, and then comma, and when I type that in, it goes to the next part of the syntax, the last part that says, okay, we're looking in the leftmost part of that field, the last name. So for example, Kershaw, we're looking and starting over to the far left, begins with the letter K, and then it goes ERSH, is going from left to right. Well, how long do we want to go ahead and read that name, beginning over to the left-hand side? We just want to read the first character. So we type in the number 1, close the parentheses, and then click OK, and there we go. So there's the group. It's going to group it by the first letter of the last name, but we don't have the first letter of the last name to have it grouped by. So we need to create an unbound text box that will have the same formula that will pull in the first letter in that last field for the last name. So come up here on the Design tab to the Controls group again. We're going to add another text box. Click on it. Come down here, click in that section, delete the label, click and drag that over here, and then go ahead and bring up the property sheet for the unbound text box. You can go ahead and right click on it, go to Properties, and then over in the control source, we want to go ahead and type in the same thing as you see here. Not the header, but just the expression there. Equals left. And as you can see, as I start typing, it wants to bring up that left function syntax where it has the left and the two fields that you need to add in order to complete this function to have it work properly. The order of operation means that the last name's coming first, then comma. The last order of the operation is to just count the first character in the last name. Hit enter, It accepts it. And then you can go ahead and apply some formatting to this. So go to the Format tab and make it bold and make it, I don't know, 14, make it really stand out here. Let me hover over the top part of the detail bar and click and drag to expand it just a little bit here. Then hover over the right middle handle and click and drag just a bit, open it up. Then I'm thinking about the group here is that, as you recall in an earlier training video, the group is on expression. When you click more, by default it wants to not keep the group together on one page. So if it gets to the bottom of page 1, 2, or 3 or any page and it can't keep all the C's together, it'll split it. I don't want it split. So we'll go ahead and click on the drop down arrow and say keep the whole group together. So instead of splitting, put it at the top of the next page. Alright, let's go ahead and close out of the group and sort. So that's not in our way. Close out of the property sheet, scroll down to the bottom. I want to close this gap, so hover over the top of the page footer until you can see your arrows pointing up and down, and then click and drag that bar up, scroll up, and then put it snug right underneath the text boxes here, so that way there's hardly any space between one record and the next. In fact, I can click and drag this down, so we've got the letter here just popping out, a little bit of space, and then all the details there. So let's take it for a test drive, see what it looks like. Let's go ahead and right click, go to the print preview. Alright, pretty cool. Except I don't like the lines around these labels here. We can go ahead and remove that. Not only that, but boy, these alternating colors don't like that either. So I want to go ahead and remove those, and also I want to add columns. So that way when it gets down to the bottom of page 1, instead of going over to page 2 and wasting all that space, just go to the top of page 1 and continue down the middle in the second column and then maybe even a third column. So we want to make some changes here. Let's right click, go back to the design view. Let's remove those alternating colors by selecting the detail bar for the details section. Coming up here on the Format tab to the background group, click on the alternate row color and say we don't want a color. Okay. And then we want to go to the Page Setup tab so we can go ahead and add columns to our report. Click on Columns. Right now the number of columns is 1. Let's try 3, see how that works. And then the column spacing is 1/4 of an inch. Let's do 0.20. And I don't want the column size same as the detail. And then for the width I'm going to go ahead and say let's do 2 inches. Hopefully that's enough. Hit the Tab key. And then for the column layout, instead of across then down, let's do down for the first column, and then across to the second column, and down the second column, then across to the third, and then down and so on. Click OK. And let's see if this looks any better. Let's go ahead and right click, go to the print preview, because what you see here is going to print out. Now we've got rid of the alternating color, but we didn't clean up the borders around the labels here, in which case right click, go back to the design view, and go ahead and let's select the group here and go to the Format tab and change alternating color to no color so it doesn't alternate with the groups. And then go ahead and select the label here and click on the Shape Outline to Transparent. I'm going to also change 2 text boxes here to Transparent, Shape Outline to Transparent. And then go ahead and right click and go to Print Preview. And okay, finally, that looks good. It looks clean. So when I go ahead and I click, it zooms out and I can get the overall layout from a distance here, seeing it going down to the bottom of page 1 and then continuing on to the second column, and then we can go to the third and fourth. And of course we can go ahead and play with the size or spacing in between the columns, but you get the idea where to go to make the changes. There it is, columns in the print preview. I want to show you how you can cancel a print job before it gets too far that you start printing off a bunch of blank pages. You could say, well, duh, just open up the report. If there's blank pages, then don't print it. Well, what I'm going off of is the parameter, as we learned in the Access Level 2 training video on parameter queries. And remember, you can base reports upon queries. So I've got this parameter query here that when I double click, it's going to prompt me for the criteria or parameters. Start date, end date. Let me click cancel. This report is based upon that query, so if I double click, it's going to ask the same thing. So if I just type it in 1/1/08, hit enter, 3/31/08, hit enter, Let's try Camp Spruce. Hit enter, click to zoom in. There we go. So between those two dates, Camp Spruce purchased these products. Now to take it one step further, let me go ahead and close it. That if somebody selects this report and says, I'm not going to check to see if there's any records there, I know that there'll be records there when I print it off. And they come up here, click on the File tab, go to the Print, click on the Print button. It's still going to request those parameters, that criteria. But when it's done and they type it all in, if they didn't get it right, it's going to print off blank pages. What a waste. So what I can do is I can go ahead and set up the Cancel Print Job feature that if there's nothing in that report, it won't print. It'll cancel the event. So to get started, let me go ahead and click Cancel and then right-click on the report, go to the Design View, and we want to bring up the property sheet for the report by coming over here and double-clicking in the blank area really fast. Brings up the property sheet. You can see the selection types for the entire report. And we want to click on the Event tab. And you see where it says On No Data. If there's no data in the report, click on its corresponding build button because we want to create a macro that will have some actions that says, okay, that will create an action that says if there's no data in here, let's create a message that says, hey, there's nothing in here. It's not going to print. And then an action to actually cancel the event so it doesn't print. So click Okie dokie. And then the first action, click on the drop down arrow. And we're going to type in, see message, there it is, message box. Hit the tab key so it selects it. What's the message? No orders during specified period. And then we can click the type arrow to, well, it's informational for you. And then the title of that informational pop-up, it's our sales period. I mean, hopefully we made sales during that period, but maybe for that particular client, they didn't purchase any products from us, like Camp Spruce, as I just showed you. And then after we get the message box, we want to go ahead and click on the next action to cancel, hit the tab key, cancel event. When we're finished, let's go ahead and click Save, and then close out here. And then be sure to save our report as well, and then go ahead and close out. Now let's go ahead and try it. I'm going to try a different date here, so I'll select the report, come up here, click on the File tab, go down to Print, click Print, and let's type in, well, as you remember, the only time that Camp Spruce purchased anything from us was in March. So if I just type in the date 1/1/08, hit Enter, and February 2/28/08, enter, then Camp Spruce, hit Enter. No orders during this specified period. Click Okie dokie. It cancels it so it doesn't print. If you want to be able to send a report electronically to anybody who doesn't have access, you can go ahead and publish your report to PDF because PDF is freeware that anybody can download to view, in this case, our report. So to go ahead and publish it, I've got my report Q1 final. Double click on it. And there it is. Click to zoom in. While I'm here, I can come up on the Print Preview tab to the data and click, well, Export to PDF or XPS or close out of that. If I didn't double click to open it up, I could select it, come up here, click on the External Data tab, go to Export to PDF or XPS, click on it, and then change the Save As Type arrow to PDF. Go to my desktop, I'll save it there, and then click Publish. There it is, it's in PDF Acrobat, and boy, does that look slick. Go ahead and close out of that. Attach it to an email, click and drag it to your USB key or CD or a DVD, and off you go. When you're done, you can go ahead and check the box to save the export steps. That way you don't have to go back through and make a couple of clicks. Instead, let me go ahead and click on Save Export. I can come up here, click on Save Export, there it is, Report Q1 Final. Select it, click Run, and boom, off it goes. It exports it. And then if I don't want it here, just select it, delete it, and it's gone. And again, that was exported to my desktop, so minimize that down to the taskbar, and there it is. Linking a table means that you want to link to a table in another database to avoid re-importing this table every time that somebody updates it. For example, if I go ahead and minimize this down to the taskbar and double-click to open up the exercises folder, I'm looking at the unmatched query. Let me select it and then double-click on it to open it up. I've got Tim's contacts, double-click that. Anytime he updates it, if he doesn't notify me, how do I know it's been updated? But if I go ahead and link to this table, then it'll automatically update my table when he updates his. And that way I don't have to go ahead and hit re-import every time I think there's an update, so it can save a lot of time here. Let me go ahead and close out of the database. Remember, it's the unmatched query database. So to go ahead and create a link of a table in here to the table over there so I can see what's going on anytime he makes updates. Come up here and click on the External Data tab, go to Import and Link, click on the Access button, and then it says, do you want to import or do you want to link? We want to link, but what do we want to link? Well, it's in the Exercises folder. Let's go ahead and click Browse. I'm in the Exercises folder and it's going to be the Unmatched Query Database. Go ahead and double click on that and then click OK. And then it opens up and it says, okay, here's some tables that we found in this database. Which one do you want to go ahead and link to? It's going to be Tim's contacts. Click OK. And what it does is it actually copies the icon up above to show that it's a table, but it also has an arrow to the left-hand side of it to show that it's not an original table here. It's linked, or arrows, to a table in another database. So if I come in here and I double-click to open it up, you can see we got a total of 25 records. And there's Max Klinger. Let's say it was spelled with a C instead of a K. So let me go back to the Exercises folder. And let's go ahead and open up the Unmatched Query Database, go into Tim's contacts, and if he comes in here without me knowing and changes it from a K to a C and clicks off to save it, and let's go ahead and close out of this database back to my database, there you go, automatically updated. Cool. Now one thought is that if the database, which is in my Exercises folder, the Unmatched Query, let me go ahead and go to it. If somebody takes this, and let me minimize this down to the taskbar, better yet, let me go ahead and close out of it completely. If somebody comes in here and says, I don't want the unmatched query in this folder, and they click and drag it and they move it out, okay? Well, the link from my database, the table analyzer, let me double click to open it up, is pointing inside that folder. And if I go ahead and double click on it, it says, hey, I can't find it because I was looking inside the Exercises folder. Click OK. What you can do is you can come up here on the External Data tab, go to the Import and Link group and click on Link Table Manager, click on it, and it opens it up and says, okay, we got one table that's linking, but it can't find it. It doesn't say it can't find it, but we know that it can't find it in the Exercises folder. So we go ahead and we check the box, and we want to prompt for a new location and click OK. Opens up the window and says, okay, find it. Well, I don't know where it's at, but I could go ahead and take a look. As you recall, it's on my desktop, and there it is, the unmatched query, double click. And then it's successful, click OK. Now the address is pointing to the desktop, to the unmatched query. So I can close out, double click to open it up, and it doesn't give me any errors because it could go ahead and reconnect to that table in that database, which is sitting on the desktop. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.